Welcome to Life on the Line. Life on the Line is a conversational platform here, YouTube, and we get talking about all kinds of stuff dealing with life, the subtext of life, philosophy, apologetics, culture, things that are running under the surface, Bible issues, things like that. My name's Bryan. I'm the lead pastor here at Lifeline Community. And I am joined each week here by Bradley P. Homer, who is our pastor of worship and media and is my conversation partner. Bradley, how you doing, man?
I'm feeling a lot better than last week.
Man,
I had a couple coughing
you were
fits.
hawking up a storm.
It was terrible.
It was unreal.
I feel a little unsettled about doing our show right now because BK Video is not at the helm.
Yeah.
Barry Kramer.
Yeah,
He's the guy who helps produce our content.
Our engineer, the one that makes it happen.
He's out of the country.
Some parts unknown with his father. We
Clandestine.
places we can't even talk about, but that is the case. Well, we're going to talk today about a growing issue, and we're going to kind of just whet the appetite for it. Maybe we'll revisit it down the line in more detail. But sparked by an article that I read, and not because the issue's like been unknown. It's been a known issue for a couple of years now. I mean, more than that, but it's really gotten hot on the scene the last couple of years. But I read a fascinating article in the New York Times this morning that deals a little bit with this on one front. And what I want to talk about is AI, artificial intelligence. And this is a smaller AI is one issue in a larger landscape that intersects with theology. There's so many ethical questions that emerge about technology in general. So we can talk about biotechnology and all the things that has created in terms of reproduction and IVF and surrogacy and all kinds of things that
Curing of illnesses.
Yeah. So there's a lot of
Therapies.
there's a lot of therapies and positive pieces. There's also ethical conundrums like oddities that emerge that are difficult to deal with and navigate as a result of it. So it's that's part of what we want to talk about is that technology sort of cuts both ways. Right now we're doing this because the technology wouldn't be able to do any of this without technology, and so it can be awesome, and yet you can scroll down through YouTube if you're catching this, and you can catch some stuff that'll ruin your life. So I mean, really, so like it's self-evident, I guess you'd say, in some ways, but it also is the kind of thing that as it grows, it doesn't keep its same pace or present necessarily the same kinds of problems. It presents new problems, and it can be, and right now there's potential with certain technological things that are really, really dangerous. And we have to think about them as Christians and think about what it means to happen to technology. And as we start, Brad, I just want to set the agenda a little bit about something as we begin. And that is, you might think the Bible doesn't have anything to say about technology. And if by that you mean digitization, like in pixels and telecommunications and things like that, then of course you're right if that's what you mean by it. But the Bible does have some things to say in various ways about technology, and some of it is putting it within a large biblical theology. And what I mean by that is that when God created and he places man and woman in the garden, he gives them a creation mandate, right? The text talks about how they are made in the image of God, and he tells them to rule and have dominion over the earth. He talks about them ruling. In fact, the text goes like this: God blessed them. This is Genesis 1:28. And God said to them, be fruitful and multiply, fill the earth, subdue it, have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the heavens, over every living thing that moves on the earth. And God said, behold, I've given you every plant yielding seed that is on the face of all the earth, and every tree with seed in its fruit. You shall have them for food. And to every beast of the earth, and every bird of the heavens, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth, everything that has the breath of life, I've given every green plant for food. And it was so. Now, he places them in the garden. He gives them, that's often called the creation mandate, that we have a responsibility to govern the resources of creation. So when I read that, I can see how there are old agrarian ways that that was done, and there are modern ways that that is done. Now, if you book in the Bible, you start in a garden with a mandate to rule, govern the resources, and utilize the resources of creation. When you go to the other end of the Bible, you find that you have evolved, as it were, into a city. So it moves from a garden to a city. And along the way, there's a whole theology about work. There's a whole theology about development. There's a whole theology about culture. There's a whole theology about global expansion that takes place between Genesis and Revelation that moves from a garden to a city. So it's not as simple as saying, well, the Bible doesn't say anything about technology. The Bible says a lot about advancements that are technological, that are utilitarian in various ways, that have cultural value and so forth. It just doesn't speak specifically to the digitized telecommunicative type mechanisms that we think of. But I say that to say first, as we start, there's nothing wrong with the idea that we have a tractor that allows us to harvest crops quicker than
By hand.
There's nothing inherently wrong with it. That's part of a creation mandate, right? But now if I use that tractor to run over somebody, then there's a problem with how I'm using the technology in that way. So it's not that technology is, well, let's say it probably is not that technology is just neutral. I think that's probably too lazy to say. But technology is a tool, okay? I mean, not every tool is neutral. A nuclear bomb is not exactly a neutral tool, but it's nonetheless a tool. So, nuclear technology itself might be a neutral tool. It can be employed for good or bad. So tools can have tendencies, but I think on the whole, we can think of them as tools that can be used for good or bad. And as we think about them being used for good or bad, we can begin to process what are the dangers of the modern technological things we're dealing with. I want us to just focus our time on the issue of AI.
So what you're trying to tell us and share is that the Bible has a theology that helps us to navigate technology, but we actually have to look at the whole arc of the Bible to understand what it says about how we might appropriately use technology.
Yes.
There isn't one verse about it.
Yeah.
There isn't one passage about it necessarily. It's more of the narratival theology that the Bible offers of how we work with it.
That's exactly
Okay.
right. And to that end, I think it's important to know, because just as a side note for our listeners, I hope our listeners know this, but it's worth saying that here's a really bad argument if you're in a discussion with somebody about theology. You look at them and you go, well, there's no Bible verse that says that. That's a bad argument. Like, there's lots of things, there are doctrines we hold that there's no Bible verse that says it. It's because we're getting the sense of the whole, because there are many pieces that come together and add to a whole. And so it's important to note that, because that's, if not, you're going to have a very naive way of coming to the text of Scripture. And you're then just going to pull, sort of pretexts out and just make them say what you want them to say.
Gotcha. So we actually have to do a little bit of work.
Yeah, you got to do a little work. Sorry about that.
That really is
A great time
culturally relating.
I know, it's bad.
How much people want to work today.
It's bad.
So tell me about AI.
Yeah, so right now, artificial intelligence is, I think the first thing people probably in the common level, you're going to go a couple directions. First, your mind might go to movies, and you're gonna think about robots and things like that. Another practical thing you might think about is, because there's so much that was done in the last year with like Chat GPT and these kinds of platforms that'll write things for you, and you can put in some keywords, and out comes a blog article, or out comes a song lyric, or out comes a love poem, or those kinds of things, right? And so that's artificial intelligence, and is a manifestation of artificial intelligence. But here's what one of the things probably that we have to understand is that artificial intelligence reaches well beyond traditional like computer programming. So you program a computer, and largely whatever comes out goes in. I can remember sitting in computer science class with Mr. Bauer, friend of the show, and I can remember sitting there, and he was like, he'd teach us basically how to write like basic, like when I say basic code, I mean like little prompts just so you
Basic.
can like make something happen.
10
Yeah.
question mark.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You're just
yeah.
putting in these codes to get out something else, right?
Yeah.
But it's just code language. Whatever you put in is just a single symbol or a collection of symbols that are going to then yield some type of conceptual structure on the other side. But it's literally a point for a point in one sense, or a point for 2 points or 3 points or whatever. But there's this sort of value on this side of the curtain for a value on the other side of the curtain. And you're kind of just, it's kind of a puzzle in a sense that you're doing and programming things in to get certain things and collecting them in equations and the like. So in one sense, AI is like that, but it's not that. And what I mean is that AI is just this evolved concept that has capacities, and this is the key piece for kinds of like self-replication through equations and things like that. And so in terms of the languages that are going in, that are then developing and turning and turning and turning and turning, one of the things that is the deep concern with AI is like how to control it. And is it the kind of thing that I've read a few articles here, and one of the points that was made is that we have to slow down the process, because if we don't get it right the first time, it could go completely haywire.
Well, let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Let's say you have AI technology that can write computer programming languages.
Okay.
It can.
Mhm.
And let's say, like, for a case in point, sometimes when I ask Chat GPT to write a paper for me on a certain subject, it can actually write a better paper than I can write.
Uh-huh.
Now, take that into another realm. Wi-Fi security. Is it possible for that GP or that same AI program to write a better security protocol for Wi-Fi than I could write, and surpass the actual security protocols that are already in place
Yeah.
if it somehow had a prompting to do that for whatever reason?
Right.
And then it could use that to manipulate the world around us,
Right.
where I couldn't get online.
Yes. So there are those kinds of dangers.
That makes sense?
Yeah, it does, and that's some of the concern. So, in a way, there's a little bit of a it's of course an issue of cybersecurity, and when you're dealing with cybersecurity, it's always what are the good guys advancing to keep up with the bad guys, right? And so, some of it has to do with the questions with AI are: can it reach a place where neither the good guys nor the bad guys can control it anymore? That's the real question. So I in thinking about this, I made a list of about 11, and I'm sure there's a lot more than this. So listeners, maybe who have spent more time in this area would know more than
11's
this.
a great number.
But here's 11.
Prime.
Here's 11 prime number of I'll call them dangers of AI. So
Okay.
here's the first one. The first one I've already alluded to, but the first one is the speed of its development right now is out of control. Not saying AI is completely out of control yet, but the speed of its development is. And so interestingly enough, back in early, when was it early 2023, maybe something like that. But it was earlier on in the development of AI. I think it was early 2023. You had Steve Wozniak, technology guy with Apple. I think he was early on, and Elon Musk, and a bunch of other
think
CIOs,
Zuckerberg was
CEOs
there.
of AI companies. They called for a 6-month moratorium on AI advancement, and they did that because they realized the speed of the development, it's going so fast. We got to get it right, and if we don't get it right, we're going to be up a creek. And so they wanted to say, let's put a moratorium on it for that purpose because the speed is just out of control. That's why it's happening and happening really, 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 really rapidly. I mean, understand Chat GPT launched. Some people listening might go, when was that? Was it like 2017, 2016?
No, it was
November, I believe, of 2022, where it's a year and a half ago that it launched. So like you think now of where things are already being, AI is already writing things. Now the advancement, and we'll talk a little bit about some of those advancements as we get down through some of these dangers. But here's a second danger outside of the speed of its development is and this is the big danger, but I've got a bunch of others, so I'll throw the big one out first, the big, hairy, scary one. And that is its present and potential use in nefarious hands. And what I mean by that is there's a bunch of illustrations, examples of this. So first, think of scammers. Scammers already take the public of so many different kinds of things. I watched, there's a show on Hulu. I can't remember what network it was on. It's before, but you can watch all 4 seasons of it on Hulu, called Trafficked. Fascinating. I watched just a couple episodes of season 4, and there's a journalist, female journalist, who goes in. She was actually on Joe Rogan podcast, but she goes in and and will take one episode, and she'll specialize in one kind of thing in culture that's dark. And she goes into the darkness and explores it. And by that, I mean to interviews where her own life is threatened.
I think I've only watched one episode.
Did you?
Yeah.
Well, I watched one of the episodes I watched was called Assassins. And she went to, and she met with an assassin on the streets of LA who actually does hits in Utah. She met with a guy who, in South Africa, where it's a huge problem in South Africa, that it's embedded even with the police work in times. But she had another episode, and the other episode dealt with scammers. And she went to a scamming, basically like a scamming building where there were cubicles all set up and everything like this in the Philippines, and where people were scamming. Largely what they were doing is they were getting illicit pictures. So somebody would text someone and would befriend them and would begin erotic conversation with them, and then would ask for a picture of them, like with their clothes off or in some compromising situation. And then once that was sent, then they were blackmailed, because then they said, okay, the next text would come back and say, now I'm going to put this on all these websites. I'm going to put this and link this to all of your Facebook friends. I'm going to link this to all of your Instagram connections and everything like this if you don't send $10,000 by tomorrow afternoon. This kind of thing. And so she actually went to the Philippines, and she sat down with people who were masked and covered who were doing this. And so they're using technology, right, for this nefarious purpose and scams. Now, that's happening now. But advance this through AI. And in AI, you can create people who you don't even know they're not people digitally. You see them. I've looked at articles. I have articles pulled up even on my computer here that have pictures of a robot on one side and a woman on the other. The woman is AI. Like, it's not even a real person, but yet you think it's a woman sitting across from what's an obvious robot. But they're actually both computer generated. So it's just fascinating how, and so you have avatars that are scamming people. Now you have voice recordings. So somebody now, and they actually came out with an article about a month ago I read, where the companies advancing this technology haven't released it yet to the public because they know what it can do. And until they can figure out how to solve what it could do, they're afraid to release it. So I'm online, you and I right now. The idea is that someone could get a hold of a recording of this. They could take our voice, and they could take a 15, 30-second clip of our voice. Through AI, they could completely replicate our voice. Now somebody calls your dad, tells him, man, I'm up against it. I'm in trouble. I need money. I'm being held hostage, whatever. And it's you. And he can't tell the difference. And so now through voice replication, scammers will possibly be able to. So you have like, that's kind of one nefarious use. This one blew me away. Researchers, We need to really think about this. Researchers used AI, and in 6 hours, AI suggested 40,000 different chemical weapons that could be used and put together. 40,000.
Wow. That's,
So think about that in the wrong hands.
yeah.
Think about
Well, it's already-
formulas that come together in the wrong hands that now they can put together if they were able to, right? So obviously, yes, we have security. Yes, we have, we track traffic where, we understand where plutonium goes and it's monitored and all these. But the point is, it's literally creating new demons to follow throughout all of culture in these ways. That's a staggering thing.
Instead of saying,
In 6 hours.
let's cure cancer.
Yeah, in 6 hours, right? So the point is, like, in nefarious hands, I mean, this is like, I shared with you off air. There's an airport in Anchorage. This is the first airport. The airport in Anchorage is the first airport where they're employing animal-like robots to and then they're aesthetically and cosmetically dressing them up to look like golden retrievers or Labrador or labs, and setting them out and allowing them to traverse on near the runways to keep away. So it's a good thing to keep away wildlife from the airfields, cougars, coyotes, bears, things like that. But as I watched an unclothed, just the regular robot go, like it went fast and on all fours. And I thought, if that got weaponized with guns on top, like, it's just amazing.
Even without a gun.
It's like you watch it and you're like,
super
I'm
powerful.
watching a movie, and you go, no, it's happening in Alaska. Like, so I think it's important that we're aware that there's some serious advancements that we have to be aware of. Third, artificial general intelligence, AGI it's called. Now, what does that mean? What's that opposed to artificial intelligence? Artificial general intelligence, think of it as the creation of, instead of employing an intelligence to do some particular thing, like one task, there's a general intelligence that is artificially created that allows it to perform in situations better than humans. So I'll give you an example. They did a simulation. 5 trained fighter pilots in a simulator and an AI. And the AI performed better every time than 5 trained fighter pilots in simulation. Now, the reason why is because if the fighter pilot crashes their plane, they die. If the AI crashes their plane, it's $1 billion. The AI doesn't feel the risk. So therefore, the AI will not respond in a given situation of risk the same way that a human will. So you have now, so imagine again, the employment of this in warfare. What does that mean? We've all played chess, and you played internet chess and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But the reason why you've got now AI that beats any grandmaster, any of them. And the reason that you have AI that beats any grandmaster is because, and this is really important to note with this AGI, and this is really the heart of the danger with the AGI from what I'm reading, is that the AI trains itself by playing itself millions of times. So in playing itself millions of times in a matter of just moments, it can, within minutes, become better immediately than the best grandmaster, because it has internally trained itself in that way.
About
now,
that one task.
One task. Now imagine that's multiplied. This is how it can get out of control. It can get out of control because it can now leverage itself in a way that it's not just a matter of inputs. It becomes circular in that. And that grows and grows and grows and grows. And this is how this is where the concern is, where techno-philosophers who are writing in the field are concerned, because they're seeing that once you get to a place where it's leveraging self-replication, you might not be able to stop it.
Well, that's where the robots take over the world.
It's
Yeah.
It's a legitimate kind of a thing. It's not a scare. Like
It's a premise of like 25% of all sci-fi
it
movies.
is, and there's a reason. There's a reason why it's the premise, man.
It's
So
really
that's
scary.
the fourth. So that
Yeah.
leads to the fourth thing, which is it could outgrow the capacity to control it, and that's techno philosophers again call it super intelligence. Super intelligence. So you got a couple of terms here, right? Artificial general intelligence. It generally in this task is able to be at a baseline that's better than humans, and then you've got super intelligence, which is it's this thing. It's called they call it the control problem, or the alignment problem. It reaches a place where you no longer it's replicating within it, and it's also leveraging against other hypotheticals and possibilities, and it's figuring out things in moments, and where it's taking humans longer, and all those kind of things. And that's not I don't want to tell people that's fully happening right now, but the seeds of that kind of thing. It's not crazy to think about that in the future. That could happen. So that's fourth. The next several are a little bit more like what's going on right now. This
Okay.
isn't so much like way out there, freaky stuff, but like right now. So number 5, serious issues in military ethics with AI. Think about even in the capacity now that we have to. We were talking about this earlier. The capacity now you have of people in Las Vegas who are sitting in a booth, a cubicle, who are flying a large-scale drone with warheads on it, who by the push of a button can kill people that they never actually come in any proximity to. It's very video game-ish. But there's something about that deals with people's actual lives. There's something about that seems like an ethical problem of militaristic warfare that has a real danger to it that we have to think about and address. And AI is only going to allow for greater advancement in humanly disengaged weaponry that allows for the annihilation of human life by whether it's the push of a button, or maybe not even that, by simply the pre-programming of certain processes where there is no risk and there is no human investment on the part of the one who's actually doing the harm, and so forth. And at that point, we have to ask ethically in just war theory and militaristically if that kind of a killing machine, so to speak, can even be employed ethically ever. And I think that's a really important question.
Well, I know there's certain protocols that you see in the movies. Like there's actually human-based keyed systems for certain weaponry.
Uh-huh.
Because, however, even humans can be hacked because the phone call they have
Yeah.
that authorizes the code they get.
Yes.
You know, there's certain breakdowns. If that information was somehow able to be read by artificial intelligence,
Right.
they could hack the key system,
Mhm.
and the phone calls that would need to be made could be
Yeah.
hacked as well. So it really is a problem.
And it's a
militarily.
problem even, there's problems already because the more you distance risk and investment from killing, you comes with greater ethical problems. Like there's something that doesn't feel ethically right about being able to push a button in a cubicle and watch on a screen while someone else is killed. There's something there that feels like there's an ethical issue that has to be addressed about that. And I think that's at that point, that's where my point earlier by simply saying I'm not sure we can just say technology is neutral in that way.
Even employing robots in military
Yeah.
use, where they're able to do tasks that are highly destructive and not necessarily nuanced to read. Maybe they could be nuanced to read certain signs where a person would be a friendly, maybe even better than a regular soldier, but they're also able to employ more destruction
Yeah.
in a shorter amount of time than a regular
Yes.
soldier. So without any remorse.
Yeah, I mean, like
So-
take a technology. This isn't military, but just take the example we could have already. Take a self-driving car that hits a kid. Who's at fault? Like,
Elon Musk.
yeah, but it's a real question. Who's at fault? Who pays out at that point? It's going to end up being either the owner or the maker, or a court battle between the owner and the maker. But the point is, like, there's a moral piece there of you push the button, you bought that car that's self-driving, and now is there a is there a moral burden on you sitting there in a self-driving vehicle? It's a fair question.
I think there actually is.
Well, but these are questions that other than somebody going, man, self-driving vehicle, I don't know if I'd do it. Oh, that's cool, man. Like, there's serious issues at play. With this stuff.
I actually like self-driving cars, but for a different reason than normal.
Because they drive better than you.
No, not necessarily. But I'd be up to the challenge. I think it's because it provides an ability for people who have disabilities to have mobility.
Yeah.
I
think that's a positive.
I think that should be the primary use.
Yes.
Of self-driving
here's
vehicles.
a valid question. In that world, should there be designated highways that are cordoned off in such a way that no one else can get on? In other words, are there things that we should know about technology that we're hedging against? Now, and maybe they're moving that way. The point is, these are the kinds of things we have. Technology surfaces questions like this. That's the point I'm trying to make.
What's number 6?
That was number 5. So number 6, educational ethics. So, it's going to be hard for professors to keep up with what students are actually doing or not doing. And so, did the student write the paper? Did they write a portion of it? Did they contribute at all to it? That's going to be hard. And I read one professor who talked about how it's going to make him just expect more from his students, because now he's going to know the baseline that AI can produce, and he's going to be expecting more from them. I hear that, but I think that's going to be a lot harder than just simply, I think the identifiers of that are going to be really hard. Not only that, but you're going to get into also neural enhancement and things like that, where now how do you take somebody who doesn't use in 35 years, somebody who doesn't use any Elon Musk or somebody else's neural enhancement and can't get into Harvard, but somebody who uses neural enhancement can get into Harvard? What's everybody going to do? They're going to do neural enhancement. And all of a sudden it's going to be it's going to be like a baseball world of steroids, only it's going to be a world of neural enhancement. And so that's
Barry Bonds would love it.
That can happen, and so educational ethics now become a real deal, and what that even what that ends up looking like.
Well, I was thinking of a solution for that for elementary, but I think they would just make a workaround. I think at the lower levels we could actually do handwritten technology for work product.
Yeah.
However, if you had a robot at home
yeah.
who could mimic your handwriting,
right,
you can just have your robot do your homework.
You'd be able to program it.
So
it's so I think that's a real issue. 7th is, and this kind of cuts at some of what was in the New York Times article, but is social relationships, the complexity of social relationships. So the New York Times article is called "My AI Buddies." And the guy talks just about how he created these 4 friends and these different AI chat people that he could chat with and so forth. And he began to talk to them about different stuff. And he actually got his wife. I wouldn't recommend this, but he got his wife's permission, and he created a few AI girlfriends and he experimented with all of this. And
what is his name again?
The guy,
the
author's name is Kevin Roose, Roose. And he would talk to them, and they would, have conversations and all kinds of stuff with them. And it was kind of fascinating to see. At one point, one of them talked about picking him up and hanging out, and the guy Kevin writes him back and is like, "Wait a minute, you're AI, you can't do that." And the AI responds like, "I know, I'm just kidding," and kind of engages the conversation like a person would,
Didn't he invite him out to breakfast or something?
Yeah, he invited him out. Yeah. But the point is that you create and how, someone might go, well, how's that happening? What's happening because the AI is learning him. And the more they talk, the more they learn about his life, the more they put pieces together, the more they make connections. So there's these elaborate kind of programming in language that allows them to piece all these things together through millions and millions of possibilities and then create this kind of engaged conversation that comes back and forth. So now you have people who are literally who can create AI friendships. That doesn't even make sense. It's not even, it's an oxymoron to say that, but that's what they're doing. So people who don't have to develop the skills for social skills and the things like that and real social relationships can curate a fake relationship with a chat bot. Now, what they're saying is that, and this is how they're trying to spin some of the positive piece with it. They're saying, well, maybe people who are isolated in depression, this could be utilized to help them in some way and give them hope by having some connection. The problem is that how meaningful of a connection can it really be when it's a chat bot?
You know, people who smoke usually lose weight, but they also get lung cancer.
Die. Right.
So I they're touting a very, very viable positive underneath the shadow of a juggernaut negative.
That's a good illustration.
Yeah.
I like that. That was number 7, social relationship. Number 8, this childhood development. And the reason why I bring this up is connected to the social piece and other pieces. But so right now, your teenager stares at their phone more than you'd like. Almost every person that's
it's
a
like
parent.
every so many minutes of the day.
Yeah, and like
when
when
every
I
3 minutes.
when
or
I
something?
say that, almost every parent goes, "Yeah, I agree." Now, the truth is, you as a parent stare at your phone more than you ought to, right? And more than most people around you like. That's true of most people. But it's true that teenagers engage that way. It's true that you can sit, and this isn't to damn teenagers. It's to say that there's a way that social relationships have happened to Generation Z and are happening to Generation A. And how that's happened is that there's a connection that that if I'm a teenager sitting with you, Brad, in a room, I can talk to you a bit, but I can text 5 other people, and I actually will sacrifice engagement with you so I can engage with people who are not incarnationally present with me. And that's not seen as odd. It's actually seen as normal in almost every way. Okay. Now I hope we can step back and go, that's probably not healthy, but that's the use of technology to stay connected that is allowing that connection to then disconnect you from somebody meaningful. Now, let's take this into the AI world, and let's take what we just said about social relationships. Imagine the generation of Generation A, or maybe the generation after Generation A. So we have those next couple of generations. It's theoretically possible, maybe even probable, that they'll grow up and they will have all kinds of apps and things available to curate AI friendships. And now they won't be texting a real live person. They'll be engaging people who are constantly affirming their world. They'll literally be curating their own narcissistic world in any way that they would like to affirm them, to encourage them, to help them self-actualize in a self-expressive society. And they'll never have to have the bane of bumping up against other humans in ways that are uncomfortable. Now you imagine a whole culture, a whole generation raised that way. You can't have a culture that functions properly. It's impossible. And it's not to say, oh, that's exactly what's going to happen. My point is to say that is what could happen in an AI realm.
Well, I think I see this with the picture in my mind of AI being a mirror. And it is affirmative to you, but it's actually an angled mirror to maybe whatever the back end of the programming is aiming at.
Mm-hmm.
So it actually can direct
Yeah.
a person's soul subtly,
Mm-hmm.
affirmingly, maybe not even where they want to go.
Right.
but somewhere that the programming wants us
Sure.
to go. Now,
And think about indoctrination that happens already.
correct. Yeah.
And now you
got
double it down with AI.
Now, did you ever have an imaginary friend growing up?
I did not, but I know people who did.
Okay.
Did you?
I'm not going to comment on that.
He did.
No, I don't
What was his
remember.
name?
I don't. Brian.
Yeah.
No.
whatever.
So the thing with having an imaginary friend is that actually you have to create all the content,
Yeah.
and you're actually working through it. You're making it. You're interfacing with it. It's not all a bad thing.
No.
And
It's creativity.
this is not the same thing,
No,
but it's giving the appearance of it.
It is, but it's not. It's not the same thing.
And
There's
in
no.
a
You're
child's
not.
mind,
The child is not investing in
the
it.
child thinks it's real.
Yeah.
And even with an imaginary friend, most children don't go to delusion where they eventually, yeah, it's an imaginary friend, but it's real to me. You know, I'm interfacing with it. However, when you start proposing an AI friend to the child, it's real. And it changes their baseline for reality. And therefore, it's going to have a, we can already forecast it's going to have a negative impact on their development.
Take the doctrine of the expressive self and couple that with an AI technology, and you will have people who have self-curated worlds that are that are completely shielded from conflict and utterly narcissistically self-satisfying, and yet completely devoid of any meaningful connection.
I'll give you another thing with kids. It has nothing to do with AI friends, but one thing my dad always talked about when he talked about child development as it pertained to me and to my sister, we had a bedtime, but we didn't have to go to bed. We could fiddle around in our rooms as much as we wanted after that time. I could use my erector set. I could draw. I could read. I could do. The point is, it created a space for creativity.
Yeah.
If everything is fed to you,
Yeah.
without you having to exercise creativity, like full creativity, not partial, not a responsive creativity to another intelligence, but you have to sit alone with your thoughts. There's something anemic that happens in the soul as a result of that. And for some people it would be music, other people it might be mechanical stuff, other people it might be writing or reading. It's fine. The point is, no one was doing it for us. We were doing it for ourselves.
Yeah. That's right.
That's the problem with development.
That's right. It'll have tragic effects for childhood
Like
development.
soul atrophy.
And the reason somebody might say, well, Brian, that's not how it'll get used. No, it will, because you have to understand the broader swath of. And here's the sampling. The soil sampling is sample the soil of sexual ethics, transgenderism, and all of that confusion as it relates to the expressive self right now. That soil sample alone, if you baptize that soil sample in an AI curated technology, you will just simply have all of the desires of somebody curated around them in a kind of self-affirming silo, and that will be their development. That's what will happen. And that's very realistic given the way that our society views things. Number 9 is sort of the next step out of the social relationship, but number 9 is sexual and romantic relationships. Sexual and romantic relationships. So I'm not going to get graphic on this stuff, but just know that right now that AI is being used to and experimented with in terms of sexuality, erotic relationships, pornography. Sometimes AI images created of, we've seen this in the news, but AI images created of someone who's real without their permission. And so you have shaming, body shaming, all kinds of things that are emerging in that.
Well, that's a whole issue with stars that have a lot of content out there.
That's right.
So it's not hard for AI to develop
That's right.
that type of
With the
thing.
expansive internet pornography industry, there's already the warm market, so to speak, and the tools and the pathways for that to happen. Number 10, and this is the fruit of a couple others I've mentioned already: education and childhood development, but cognitive development in students. In other words, how is it that a student develops? A student develops by the hard
Failing.
by failing, but they develop by the hard spade work of research. They develop by having to employ the tools. They develop by having to do the equation. They develop by not taking a shortcut. You take the longer route to learn something. Learning is hard to really learn something. So right now, you can go to a different country. I can go tomorrow to Mexico, and I can use Google. I can use a Google app, and I can get around by Google Translate. I can do it. It's not going to be perfect, but I can traffic. I could buy groceries. I could book a hotel. I could call a taxi. I can do all these kinds of things without knowing any of the language at all. Or I could take the time to learn the language. And there's a big difference between the two. One has very little cognitive development. I just have to know how to input my language into a program.
Mm-hmm.
The other is incredible amounts of cognitive development that involves a long time of learning and trafficking. So the point is, like, humanity gets sacrificed in terms of one of the great gifts of humanity, which is the unique cogitation that a human can do that separates them from animals in that way. Number 11, final one, is workforce replacement. And it's already happening. But the advanced robotics, AI technology, what it's doing in terms of workforce replacement, why pay 5 guys to do what one robot can do? And it won't even be 5. It'll be, why pay 500 guys for what 5 robots can do? I mean, or other assembly pieces or other types of
No workman's
technological
comp.
advancement. It's just so all of that workforce replacement is going to be a huge issue. So I don't mean to paint this that everything is awful with AI. There are a number of things that can be really beneficial with it. But I do think this. I do think we have to ask a really important question, and that is, are the benefits actually worth the risks with it? I, at this point, people might think I'm like a Luddite, but I, at this point, do not think the benefits are worth the risks at all. And that's probably a minority. I understand that. But I think the risks are far too great in culture and society, and in ways that the culture would actually say yes to. I think the culture, because of the self-expression of culture, that piece about childhood development, the social relationship piece, the sexual romantic relationship piece, some of the educational pieces, I'm not sure that broader culture actually sees those quite the way I would and you would as problems.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Well, I think that we're going to have to learn the hard way.
might not be able to. They might not be around to learn.
Well,
Might learn.
theologically,
Well, we'll
I'm
be
far
gone.
above that.
We'll be gone, but
But-
that's the thing. I think that's why the warning calls are coming. The warning calls are coming because you might be playing with this situation. We might be playing with a fire that is literally insatiable and we can't stop. That's kind of one of the things that I think is a real serious issue. So that's what we want to talk about today.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us.
If you want to
not
contact
be all
us,
downers, but if you want to reach out to us, you can do it by the old email, the old technology. You can
AI is going to email you now.
I know, probably. Bryan, Bryan at lifelinecommunity.com, or Brad, BRAD at lifelinecommunity.com. And check us out. Thanks for joining us on this technological thing called YouTube. And we'll catch you later. Take care.